Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meet civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Bernie ISD trustee and owner of the Bernie Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Bernie City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros. Ready, aim, ceasefire.
Good morning, Kendall County. This is Ceasefire. My name is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And happy Independence Day to everybody in Kendall County and America. Today, if you can guess our topic, you win a flower. What is it? Declaration of Independence. That's what we're going to talk about today. And we've got a guest, a friend of mine who's visiting from out of town, James Hodges. Welcome, James.
Well, howdy.
Thanks for coming down and joining this conversation. James has taught history and political science and is a serious American history buff.
Yeah, and Barron's going to pay him, right? For this appearance?
That would be nice. I didn't know about that, but that would be nice.
No. He was going to pay me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's dive in.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I guess with the document. I've got my handy-dandy pocket Declaration of Independence right here.
All right.
And we've got lots of these at the store if anybody needs to pick up one. I think everybody should have one for their back pocket or their glove box.
Yeah, because it could maybe serve as kindling if you get stuck in Colorado under a snowstorm.
No.
Wow. Okay, so that appeals to one side of the audience. Okay, let's get back to the proper side.
Oh, yeah. I'm not ragging on the document, but
okay.
I mean, honestly, how many people do you know actually read it anymore?
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. Yeah, and do they even know what the different parts are?
I mean, honestly, we wouldn't even be on the air if everybody read the thing, right?
Yes, you're right.
All right, so I'll tell you where I want to dive in.
Okay.
As I've read this thing over the years, there are a lot of assertions that are made, right? Like, hey, the king is not doing the right thing. The king hasn't done this. And it always struck me as kind of an odd argument because, well, he was the king and it was a constitutional monarchy, a little different from what they have today. The king back in those times had a lot more authority than the current king of England does. And so to assert that he hasn't done this or he hasn't done that, well, he didn't have to.
But the Declaration was a result of an ongoing conversation in how are we going to change the way people are governed. And this was sort of the culmination of this. I don't like the term the Enlightenment period, but of that discussion that, we don't need kings. Mm-hmm. And we should be able to decide how we are governed.
Don't disagree with that, but prior to 1776, most of those same guys who wrote this Declaration of Independence had this belief that they had the rights of Englishmen. So we started off at a point where we're like, hey, we're Englishmen and we just want you to uphold the laws. But by the way, these are the laws that we don't think you're upholding and, you need to sign away on them and approve them. And then we get to a point where we're saying, well, okay, we got these natural God-given rights.
I think it changes the concept of government. Up to that point, it was, how are we going to serve the government? How are we going to serve the king? And the Declaration of Independence changes that completely. It says the government is here to serve us.
Right.
Not us to serve the government.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that the trigger was the abuses.
Yes.
That up until then, they were like, okay, we can live with the old form of government. But when the trigger came, they're like, we've got to change this. And then they started talking about, well, how should we change it?
Right.
Oh, maybe we should govern ourselves.
Yeah, and that trigger, there's a tension there because they're basically saying, hey, the king hasn't done this, and I'm all grand with everything that's happened since then, right? So I'm not arguing for the British here, but basically our founding fathers were saying, hey, the king hasn't done this, and I would ask, especially if you were a British person, you'd say, well, the king doesn't have to. Like, where do you come off making that bold statement?
I think this is addressed actually in the Declaration of Independence right here. Governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. They weren't saying that you should just overthrow a government. Mm-hmm. You should not. According to all experience, that mankind are more disposable to suffer while evils are sufferable. So while evils are sufferable, while this was okay, when you live under tyranny, a little tyranny, you can.
Right.
And you should, because you don't know when you have a revolution what you're going to get on the other side. It's great to say, hey, we want a Republican form of government on the other side.
Right.
But you didn't get that in Cuba. You didn't get that in Russia. So
right.
you don't know what you're going to get on the other side of that revolution.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I had that in my notes too. And I was thinking, okay, well, so there's the reason, right? It's like we've long suffered, we've put up with it. So project forward 250 years. Do you think, and this is a big hypothetical here, do you think that we're suffering more under our current form of U.S. government than the colonialists were 250 years ago?
Yeah. And that's the question. It's sort of the boiling frog question.
Yeah.
They had some dramatic things that happened. Suddenly the king started stationing troops and things like that and passing some certain laws that made them mad. We've had them build up very slowly, one after another, and we've gotten used to the little incremental growths in control.
But I don't think we suffer, because I think one of the great things about the Declaration of Independence is it sort of points out where our human rights. It's the first document, in my opinion, that really talks about human rights, that human rights are ours.
Right.
Because before it was the king gives you the rights, and the king, like you're saying, but now it's, no, rights are ours. They're
Right.
just given to us because we're God made. So they're ours. I don't feel like our rights today have been taken away like they were back then. I mean, I understand that we still have some tyranny. I think we can long suffer still.
Yeah. Oh,
Because I don't think, we're being taken off the streets to be put in jail for the most part. We don't have, star chamber courts and things like that.
I would agree
that's
with that.
a good point. Our justice system is much more transparent.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's a big check. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I agree with that. However, and I'm not trying to be the show's contrarian today, but we also have this very large bureaucracy, right? We have all of these departments under the executive branch of government that for a long time have been able to, without the courts, been able to fine and take rights away from people. And again, I'm not trying to be the show contrarian today, but it was interesting to me reading that section of the Declaration of Independence and thinking about where we are today and trying to put myself in the past 250 years ago and think, okay, well, which is worse? Did we have a mindset 250 years ago like, to heck with this, let's just start our own country, and today we're just a little more complacent, like, I'm willing to put up with that?
Well, we got to also remember that not everybody at the time had any interest in going independent. I mean, there was a small percentage of people actually that did that, and so I think it's the same now. We have a small contingent of people who are pushing for change, and we have most people who, they go along to get along, and they're fine with that. And so I don't know if the people have changed that much as far as what they're willing to put up with. I don't know.
Yeah, and it just wouldn't be the same today anyway. I mean, what do you do? Like, jump a cargo ship and throw a bunch of Liptons over into the harbor? It doesn't sound as cool,
No.
And you don't get the tricorn hats either. I mean,
I can get you one.
Not off of Amazon. I want a real one, the real tricorn hat. I mean, now we have a revolution. Everybody's going to be wearing their favorite sports team ball cap. That's not the same.
Good point. Good point. Okay.
Sorry. You thought this was going to be a serious conversation today.
I sort of did. Okay. James, I want to ask you a question. You grew up in the heart of it. You grew up 5 miles from Lexington, or whatever it was. And so you were imbued with this as you grew up and walked the same paths that the revolutionaries walked and the farmed and all that. How do you think that affected you in an understanding of what happened? Because that's Massachusetts, and now I go to Massachusetts, and I don't know if anybody there understands what the Declaration of Independence is about. But you grew up there, and you are strongly a believer in it.
So I'm not going to accept that I grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, man.
So my dad was in the Air Force. I lived in many different places, including Texas, by the way. That's where I started my education, was in Texas. When my dad retired from the Air Force, he drugged me to Massachusetts. So I did go to junior high and high school up in Massachusetts. And I think It's the patriotism that my parents imbued in me,
Somewhere from the family.
It was their part of our culture, our family culture, was that, you respected the United States, you loved the United States. And Massachusetts was different 30 years ago also than it is today. I would say there was more patriots back then, because we used to, on April 19th, the day of Battle of Lexington and Concord, we would gather at Captain Isaac Davis's house, who happened to be the first Minutemen killed at North Bridge, and we would march the old path that the Minutemen went from Acton to the North Bridge, which I think that makes you love the country more, makes you love the documents more, makes you, want to serve the United States. And that's, honestly, I went to A&M with the whole purpose of being in the U.S. military, following in the footsteps of all of my uncles, all of my cousins, that's what you did. Things changed. I did not go into the military. My junior year, the Berlin Wall came down. They cut the military dramatically. I never went into the service. But I also realized that there's other ways to serve your country, than just being in the military. Teaching history, I think, serves my country.
In the Declaration, there's this one sentence that, and I've mentioned this on the show before, that there's a book about it called The Greatest Sentence Ever Written, which is that we are endowed by our Creator. And it doesn't define the Creator, so it could be God, it could be nature, it could be anything. It's just the act of creation, of being, endows you with these rights. And when I read that, it sends me some chills, because I think, that had never been even conceived before as a form of society. I mean, the Christian and Judeo heritage hinted at that and talked about us being equal before God and things like that. But this laid out the foundation that this is the way we're going to run ourselves. And nowadays, people believe that, I think, for the most part, but they take it for granted, and it's assumed that that's just the way it is, for the most part. And I don't think people understand the dramatic shift in a society that understanding brought about.
What frightens me about that is I don't think that people understand what it means. Because I go into a government class. I tutored A&M students for 15 years in government, and I go in, I say, where do your rights come from? And they're going to say the Constitution. And I'm like, our founding fathers are now flipping in their graves because you said that rights come from the Constitution, and they don't. As you said, they're endowed. They're ours.
Yeah.
And that's a topic you and I have talked about on the show before. If the rights are a document, or if they're inside the document, which is given to you by, some guys 250 years ago, well, they can take that away. If it's given to you by God, nobody can take that away. But people today, I don't think they understand that, and you often hear people talk about, well, my right to privacy, something you and I have discussed, or my right to this, or my right to that, things that aren't even written into the Constitution, right? But they talk about that, and I always just if I could reach into a TV and grab somebody by the lapels and say, where are you getting that right from? Why do you think you have that right? What's its basis? And I agree with you, James. I don't think most people understand the origin of their rights.
And it's scary, because they want to fight over the Supreme Court saying this, saying that. And I'm like, but that's not where it came from. The Supreme Court can't grant you a right. It's not given to you. You already have it. It's if the government's going to actually do their job and protect it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Martin Luther King once described the Declaration of Independence as a golden apple, and the Constitution as a silver cage around it that protected that golden apple. And he made the point that they were two separate things, and they're serving two separate purposes. But the heart of everything is the Declaration of Independence. And the Constitution is supposed to support that and protect that, not the other way around, or the laws are what are important, but that the Declaration of Independence is important. And the interesting thing I found is that actually referred back to Lincoln partially wrote a speech, I don't think he ever gave it, about the Declaration being a golden apple and the Constitution being a silver frame around it, which actually goes back to some Proverbs about something fittingly said. So in the King James translation of Proverbs 25:11, a word fittily spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver, to describe the relationship between the principles of the Declaration and the purpose of the Constitution. That's what Lincoln was doing. And I just thought it was really neat that they were framing them that way because it shows the importance of one and the purpose of the other. And so I thought that was pretty cool. But with that, we got to take a break, and we will be right back with Ceasefire, Dale and Ron. Bernie has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Bernie Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Bernie Bookshop. We pride ourselves on finding what you are looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Bernie Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Bernie at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Bernie Bookshop. Welcome back. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, and we're meeting with James Hodges, and we're talking about the Declaration of Independence and some of the history about it and some of how it might apply today if we actually thought about it sometimes. And I finished off last segment with talking about the golden apple and the silver cage around it and the importance of the relationship between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Have you heard about that?
I've never heard that before, but I do like it.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way I think of it. I think I've said this to Dale before. I think the Declaration of Independence is the greatest man-made document ever.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned this to y'all earlier that I think, you know, the Bible is obviously more important, but then you have the Declaration of Independence. We think of it as an American document, and it's really a document for the world. It's saying, you know, this is where rights come from, and you have the right to revolution. If the government's not doing what it's supposed to, you have the right to overthrow it, not just here, but in the world.
Yeah.
You have the right. It's a document for the world.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of countries did the revolution but didn't follow through on the rights.
James, I got a question for you. And this goes back to a previous segment when I was talking about the colonialists and their allegations against the king, and one of those was that he imposed taxes on us without our consent. And I thought about that, and I'm like, well, and again, it goes back to this thing, well, he was the king. You know, how do you consent? He's the king, right? And so how would you have done that back then, and how do we consent to that today?
So the consent was from the Magna Carta and the English Bill of Rights, saying that they've got to have a parliament where you vote for a representative who then would be able to tax you. So when we're saying that we don't have consent, it's because we didn't have a voice in parliament.
Okay.
So literally what they should have done, because the concept of taxation is, it's going to happen. Even back then, they understood, you know,
right.
Taxes happen. But literally probably what they should have done is they should have given because a lot of it came from the French and Indian War. We had to pay for that.
Right.
They should have given a bill to Massachusetts. Massachusetts then Assembly taxes their people to pay the bill for protection. You know, instead they were doing a direct taxation on the people, and they were saying, hey, you can't do that because we haven't consented. We don't have a voice in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for the historical record, why didn't we have that voice in Parliament? Like, what had happened? Was it the 100 years prior of these people just kind of doing their own thing and the British government ignoring them, or what caused that breakdown?
I think there was some of an arrogance by the king, because I'm the king, I don't have to, you know. There was also a lot of people in Parliament felt, you know, well, you do have a voice, we're doing what's best for you. It's almost like an elitist type, you know, well, we know what's best for you, so we're doing it for you anyways, you know, and so you do have consent because we're over you, you know, so I think that's part of it. There were members of Parliament, there were a lot of the British people who said, stop treating the Americans like that because they're going to revolt. I think it was Lord Pitt, it may have been Lord Pitt or Lord North, one of them was saying, they're going to break away if we continue doing this. Mm-hmm. And they were correct. That's what's going to happen. If you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, eventually people say that's enough.
So what was the root of that, I'll call it an animosity, that drove the king to treat the American people that way?
I think it was sort of, they're just colonials. Mm-hmm. They're probably not equal to a real Englishman.
Okay.
Where the people in the colonies were thinking, we're Englishmen. We have all the rights of Englishmen, and I think there were some in England, well, no, you're really just colonials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it was an arrogance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
At this point, I want to bring in a couple of books that we got, because we have quite a few books on American history and the Constitution. And there's a neat set of books. They're small hardback books. They're, I don't know, $10 or so, if I could read it, but I can't because I don't have my glasses on. But we've got one like on the quotations of Alexander Hamilton, quotations of Thomas Jefferson, quotations of Benjamin Franklin, Washington, and how to treat the flag, all these different subtopics of patriotism. And they're neat. They're great gifts for people. And we got them at the Bernie Bookshop, and we've got a wide variety of them. So pop in and take a look, and you might find one you like.
So I'm going to say, I'm reading through the Declaration. It does talk about the British, because it says, we've been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. So they have been saying, hey, to the British people, look at what's happening to us.
Right,
look at what's happening to us. Help us out. Help us out. And they felt that they were abandoned by the British people also. And so it's like, well, we have nobody to go out on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we had a Pew Research Center back in 1776, because I'd love to know what the British people, like the non-parliament, non-monarchy people, thought about the Americans. You know,
I bet they didn't think anything about them. I mean, do regular people think about what goes on in American Samoa, Puerto Rico?
Maybe not, but it was a smaller world back then and heavily dependent on trade. The empire was heavily dependent on trade, and so I think they might have thought about what the Americans were bringing to the table via ships.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think today, yeah, I agree with you. We don't think about American Samoa, and maybe we should every time we open up a can of StarKist, but you know. Or whatever other reason. I'm sure there are other things coming out of American Samoa,
Or our tax dollars going into there.
Yeah. But we get good tuna back, you know.
Yeah.
I understand as we call it the American Revolution, that when they teach it in the UK, that it's called the Great Rebellion. Is that true?
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I can see
I
it.
believe
It seems
that.
like it should be.
I think that's a great name for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that might
It
have
was
been
a rebellion.
Yeah, it was, and it was great. I mean, it's certainly monumental. Great for us, maybe not so much for them. And I'm not so up to date on my British history, but I would think that that's probably the most significant rebellion that they faced.
Yeah. I lived in England for a few years, and it was interesting that there are Independence Day celebrations there. But on base, of course. We were on an Air Force base.
Yeah.
And they'd have fireworks, and I just thought, wow. I mean, I couldn't believe they were putting up with that. But of course, it was miserable cold and rainy because it was England, so we didn't barbecue outside. But it was kind of interesting that we were doing that there.
Well, maybe that's why King George was so cranky. It was miserable, cold, and rainy.
Yeah.
And we were over here enjoying the sunshine and
The swamps and the malaria. Yeah, life wasn't quite so amicable as it is today in the South.
So 3 of us in this room, of the 4 of us, have lived in Massachusetts. And Baron, you're the odd man out now. So I'm just wondering, because I mean, man, there's so much U.S. history in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I go there still frequently, and it's there in the buildings. You can see it in the architecture, but it's just kind of like, But over here in Texas, we're still kind of, hooping and hollering about the Alamo.
Yeah.
It seems a little more flag waving happens over here than up over there.
Yeah.
This might be somewhat off. When I was in high school, my high school mascot was the Colonials. And they have since changed that because, that is not a politically correct term anymore. And I'm like, we couldn't help it. I mean, we were stuck here. We came over, that's what they were. We're colonies, but I don't know.
I mean, we got a lot of shared experiences. My high school, we were the volunteers, and they can't. Well, I think they're still volunteers, but they're probably like the Robert E. Oh, not that Robert E. Lee anymore. It's the Lee, probably community volunteers or something.
Yeah.
Just wipe that name off and.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I think I see going on a lot now today is the sort of rewriting, the smudging of what people were doing and what really happened. And I hate seeing that, especially when people put everything in the context of current sensibilities and say, oh, well, they did this and this. I'm like, well, everybody did that. Everybody used an outhouse or whatever it is, And it's frustrating.
This is something else that we always seem to circle back to. We take these people in history and we try and bring them forward into 2026 and say, well, how dare they? Well, that's, but then we forget about all of these rights that we've now proclaimed for ourselves that aren't written anywhere. But we have that ability to do that because of what happened 250 years ago.
Right.
And so it's interesting to me how there's so much hatred and animosity towards the founding fathers and the colonialists and all this other stuff that is so relevant to today, where we are and what we enjoy and the rights that we have.
Right.
You know, it's like hating on your grandfather or something.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah. The Declaration is the basis that freed the entire world from tyranny.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still tyranny, but there's this concept globally now that people have a say in their own lives that just didn't exist. And it's an astounding concept. But people don't see it.
And now we got this tyrant named Barron who's giving us 1 minute left. I think we need to overthrow him and take over this radio station.
There we go.
I want another 30
Viva la
minutes.
radio.
People in the form
Okay, well, we're going to let James have the last word. I think he's probably got something he wants to finish up with.
I think, again, going back to the endowed by our Creator, I definitely believe our founders were believers in God. You know, and sometimes we want to downplay that. We want to say, well, they were deists, they were this and stuff, but they were believers. And when you end it with, and the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, literally what they're saying is it's, if we win, it's because God wants us to win. You know, July 4th, when this document is proclaimed, George Washington is on Manhattan Island surrounded by General Howe and Admiral Howe. There's no reason he should get away.
Yeah.
And yet he does.
Yeah.
And I think it's divine providence. I think we're here for a reason.
He had a lot of close calls. I mean, there were so many reasons why that revolution should not have succeeded. And so many times since then when our republic should have collapsed for one reason or another. And there's been things that pull us out of it.
Well, I would say that Washington probably had a better idea of where the subs ran in Manhattan than the British. More familiarity with the subway system. That's my answer.
Okay, well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for listening to Ceasefire on this special day. And if you miss any of it, you can always go to BernieRadio.com and listen to the podcast or any of their other great podcasts. And we will see you next week.